So I've got a clip of Donald Trump being interviewed over the phone on Fox News. I want to play that a little bit later in the video because it's a perfect example of what I've talked about here on the channel in how that Donald Trump's speech and his rhetoric should absolutely alarm any reasonable person. When he says things like he wants to terminate the Constitution, be a dictator on day one, bring in a new Reich, he wants to root out the vermin, when he uses phrases like that and people like us points it out, the mainstream media loves to jump on us and say that it's us that's being divisive. We're the ones that are stoking the flames, and we're the ones that needs to call for unity. And I am one person who just refuses to be gaslit. And I refuse to sit back and watch Piers Morgan gaslight Brian Tyler Cohen and not call him out for it, because that's what's going on in this next clip. Brian Tyler Cohen is being interviewed by Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan wants to know why Kamala Harris hasn't called for unity after the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Like it's her that's got to do this whole thing. And Brian gives an absolute epic response, but Piers won't let him off the hook. He wants to know why we compare Trump to Hitler. Brian does a great response here, but I want to talk more about it once you guys get done watching it. Take a look.
That Kamala Harris missed in her speech, it was not a bad speech at all. But one thing she didn't do, she didn't allude to the assassination attempt on Trump. And it's only been 9 days since someone tried to murder Donald Trump and actually shot him in the ear, killing him by a quarter of an inch. Would it not have been a smart move in between calling him, a sexual predator and a con man and a fake and blah, 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 very ad hominem stuff? Would it not have been a smart move in terms of unity had she just taken a moment to acknowledge the assassination attempt and say how pleased she was that he survived it? Something of that nature.
Piers, I find it so bizarre that the onus is always on the Democrats, it's always on the adults in the room to create unity. Where was everybody for the last 6 years calling for unity when Donald Trump was president? And, as far as the violence is concerned, I feel like any effort to try to pin, again, the onus on Democrats in terms of lowering the temperature in this country is just a testament to the fact that the Republicans are graded on the curve. Remember, it was not the Democrats, while we're talking about political violence, it wasn't the Democrats who laughed at Paul Pelosi being bludgeoned with a hammer. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who called for military tribunals for Liz Cheney. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who laughed at a kidnapping plot against Gretchen Whitmer. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who called for General Mark Milley to be executed. That was Donald Trump. It wasn't Democrats who posted a baseball bat photo with Alvin Bragg and threatened death and destruction if he was charged. So in all of these examples, Piers, it is not the Democrats who've done this. It's not the Democrats who've validated the use of political violence as a tool in this country. And it shouldn't be on the Democrats all of a sudden to be the adults in the room.
All right, Brian, to a point, Lord Copper, as we would say in the UK, right? It is the Democrats who for 8 years have screamed that he's Adolf Hitler. That's fairly violent rhetoric. You're comparing him directly to an absolute genocidal maniac who murdered 12 million people, including 6 million Jews in a Holocaust. So when you do that, that is violent rhetoric.
Piers, if Donald Trump acts like a fascist, it is not the Democrats' fault for calling him a fascist.
You're saying he is?
That is his
Hitler? He is Hitler?
No, absolutely not. But I'm saying he does act like a fascist. He does want to consolidate power in the executive branch. He does want to send the military into American cities. He does want to
terminate the Constitution. So you have no problem comparing him to Adolf Hitler?
I am calling him a fascist. That's what I'm doing.
I knew as Piers was asking that question that Brian Tyler Cohen was going to come back with a masterful answer, and he absolutely did. But this is one thing that I would say to Piers Morgan if he framed the question to me the same exact way. What I would say is, Piers, what was Adolf Hitler? Was he a dictator? Oh, was that what he was? Okay. Well, Trump does say he wants to be dictator on day one. Would Hitler do away with the Constitution? Would Hitler root out the vermin? Because if the answer is yes to those things, it's not that we're comparing him to the brutality of Hitler. We're comparing him to the language. And we're saying that that should raise a red flag, because if someone would use that type of language, what else could it lead to? I'm sure there were people back in Germany in the 1930s going, man, this guy's kind of unhinged. Hey, look at this guy. Do you hear what he's saying? There had to have been someone there saying it, and there had to have been the Piers Morgans of the world going, yeah, well, you guys are just dividing everybody. It's so ridiculous. Now, I'm going to play the clip of Trump being interviewed on Fox. Folks, he's praising dictators. He's absolutely praising dictators, because he says that anyone that burns a flag should serve a year in jail, because you couldn't get away with that under Putin. You couldn't get away with that under Kim Jong-un. Listen to this and tell me, is this not a red flag?
the American flag down. They were writing Hamas on the bell outside of Union Station. What does a Donald Trump do if he takes office to these people on the street?
Rarely have we seen anything like this, and I think you should get a 1-year jail sentence if you do anything to desecrate the American flag. Now, people will say, oh, it's unconstitutional. Those are stupid people. Those are stupid people that say that. We have to work in Congress to get a 1-year jail sentence when they're allowed to stomp on the flag and put lighter fluid on the flag and set it afire. And when you're allowed to do that, you get a 1-year jail sentence and you'll never see it again. And all over the world, Putin and President Xi of China, all over the world, they're watching this. Kim Jong-un, he looks at us like we're a bunch of babies. They see that. That wouldn't happen in their countries. It's impossible for that to happen in their country. Where we look so bad to the world. That was a disgraceful display yesterday.
So he's praising dictators and he's saying out loud, I know this is unconstitutional, but we're going to have to do it anyway. I mean, Putin wouldn't put up with that. Kim Jong-un wouldn't put up with that. So he's praising dictators and saying he would go against the Constitution. We're not in the wrong for pointing this out, that's kind of alarming. That kind of raises a red flag. Why don't Piers Morgan bring Donald Trump on his show and ask the real tough question, which is, why is it every time you talk about leading our country, you reference dictators and you say you're going to do it like them? And you talk about doing away with the Constitution. Why don't Piers Morgan ask those questions? Why does he sit and hammer someone like Brian Tyler Cohen and try to beat him into submission and not ask the tough questions to MAGA? And why are we the bad guys for pointing out that this should alarm anyone? And before anyone says anything, let me make this perfectly clear. I do not agree with burning a flag, okay? I do not agree with desecrating a flag at all. I personally would never do it. I find the act to be repulsive. But it is protected under the First Amendment. It is freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And that's what we're supposed to have in this country. We're supposed to be able to speak out against our leaders. That's what separates us from the Putins and the Kim Jong-uns and the Saddam Husseins of the world. We went into Iraq not too long ago. And I remember hearing Republicans say to me, we got to get rid of that dictator because he won't let his own people speak against him. And now that same party of people has Donald Trump saying, yeah, I'm going to do like Putin, by God. I don't care what the Constitution says. And people like Piers Morgan sitting back going, why is it Kamala calling for unity? What is wrong with you? What in the hell is wrong with you? We're not supposed to unify with that. I don't want to unify with a guy calling for a new Reich. I don't want to unify with a guy saying he wants to terminate the Constitution and be a dictator. Who in the right mind would want to unify with that? No, what I would call for is unity of common sense, unity of logic, and unity of reason. And let as many logical, reasonable, and sensible people get together in one place and drown out that loud, violent rhetoric that MAGA is doing. They're the ones turning up the temperature there, Piers. It ain't hard. This really isn't hard. But it just gets under my skin like I cannot explain to see a good guy like Brian Tyler Cohen just get hammered for that. But yet they'll just sit back and listen to that Trump interview and be like, oh, interesting. No, it's alarming. It should absolutely alarm anyone. And I know I do a terrible British accent. My apologies to all you folks overseas. I'm sorry. But it's ridiculous. It should alarm anyone. We're not the bad guys for pointing this out, folks.